Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, an update on the Phoenix housing market and what to expect the rest of the year. Summer is almost here. We'll look at a new report on the hazards of high heat, and the latest Arizona Town Hall focuses on those living paycheck to paycheck. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. The Phoenix housing market is experiencing a seasonal bounce, but what does it mean for the rest of 2014? Mike Orr is the director of the Center for Real Estate Theory and Practice at ASU's W.P. Carey School of Business. It's good to see you again. Seasonal bounce, what's going on here?
Well, prices bounced up a little bit in March, having taken a dip in January and February, then I'm back up to the same level we saw in December. But the main thing I'm seeing this year is the number of sales is quite a bit down. In fact, it's been the slowest start to the year in the last 16, with one exception. 2008 was even slower. So a lot of people disappointed by the amount of activity going on, and it's really just demand is now dissipated because the investors have moved out of town, gone elsewhere.
I was going to say, in your report, the investor demand looks like it has really dropped off. What's going on there?
Well, prices got to the point where there's not many bargains left. There's plenty of bargains in other parts of the states where foreclosures are still active. Our foreclosures have really pretty much come to an end now. So most of the homes for sale are selling for close to normal list price, which is too high for most investors.
Indeed. I think in your report, August or July of 2012, investors bought 40% of homes. Now it's only 17%.
That's right, 17 and dropping.
Yes.
It's probably going to get below 15, which I would consider normal. So
what's hot right now? It sounds like luxury, and I mean big-time luxury homes.
Yeah, the multi-million-dollar homes are selling very well. Of course, they don't sell in large numbers, but compared with the last few years, we've seen more sales this quarter than any year since 2007. And you can see a correlation between how well the stock market does and how well the high end of the housing market does. And on top of that, it's very easy to get a loan for a lot of money if you've got a lot of money in the first place. So the banks are really falling over themselves trying to come up with jumbo loans for the people who've got plenty of money to pay it back.
Is it still as difficult, though, for the others who aren't
regular
quite so?
Folks,
yes.
Qualifying can be very hard. I mean, everybody got burnt by the housing crisis, and banks still have fairly tough guidelines for credit scores, income ratios. All of these things are still fairly strict. I'm seeing them gradually loosen them up. That's why I think demand will start to come back from this point, because the lenders can't carry on with the current low rate of mortgages. They need more borrowers. So last year, typically you had to have 700 as a FICO score to qualify. I think that's going to come down into the 600s. And consequently, more people will be able to qualify for loans and buy homes.
Will demand increase as well when that first wave of folks who got caught and maybe walked away from homes and got penalized at 7-year waiting period or whatever that thing is? Yeah,
foreclosures really peaked. They started, they were fairly low in 2007. 2008 was a big year for foreclosures. 2009-10, even bigger. So we've got this wave of people who've been through foreclosure, and it's now 7 years behind them. But that really starts next year. I say 7 years because if we're talking about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac backed loans, they have this wait period. If you've had a foreclosure in the last 7 years, don't bother applying.
Right.
They do have some exceptions, I should say. You know, there are certain people who can get by on certain exceptions, but for the vast majority of people, their wait really comes to an end 2015. Next year, I think, will be busier.
So next year, you do see an uptick.
And I think for the following 4 years, we'll have, like, there's 21% of the homeowners in Maricopa County went through a foreclosure since 2008. So that's 21% of people who will then be eligible to buy a home again. That's a big wave.
If they want to buy a home.
If they want to.
And that goes into this idea that you write about regarding demand being down due to household formation or lack thereof.
Right.
Talk about that.
Well, across the whole country, we've got remarkably low levels of household formation. And that's where people are basically sharing with parents, sharing with their friends, not going out there and having, starting a family as young as they used to. So people are just not creating new households until later in life. And we therefore have less demand for housing than we've traditionally had.
Is that going to be a new normal?
It could be. It's generational, I think. You know, the millennials are tending to put these things off longer than the baby boomers did and Gen X. So at some point, I imagine they are going to have kids and get married and do all this other stuff. But it's just later in life for them. So if you like, there's a sort of pent-up demand for housing. But I think they probably want a different type of house as well. The millennials tend to have a preference for urban life rather than suburban life. So I think that's good news for people who are redeveloping in the urban centers of the community.
And so what does all of this news mean to the rental market?
Oh, the rental market is really hot right now, because if you're not buying a home, then you're still living here, you're renting.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a lot of people who are looking for rentals. Rentals are actually in fairly short supply. And a lot of investors, seeing an opportunity, are actually creating more rental buildings. We have this quarter that just finished had the largest number of multifamily unit permits of any quarter I've seen, with one exception. It's the second busiest quarter. So definitely a lot of multifamily buildings being created.
And yet those new home starts not so hot.
No, everyone's looking at the rentals right now, reacting to the demand that's shifted. But these things come in cycles. So, you know, what's hot now will be cold in the future.
So basically, hang on through the summer, wait till what, end of the year, maybe this time next year?
Well, I think next year will be somewhat busier than this year. But, you know, I think it's probably the 2015 to 2020 is when we really get back into our stride.
All right, good stuff. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
$139 heat-related deaths were reported last year in Arizona, and with summer just about here, we discussed the dangers of high heat with Arizona Department of Health Services Director Will Humble, along with ASU researcher David Handula, who recently studied the correlation between hospital room admissions and higher temperatures. Good to have you both here. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thanks.
This heat-related deaths business here, 118 deaths per year usually, something along those lines. Men, 7 out of 10. What's going on with men in heat-related deaths?
It's been that way for probably 20 years. Every year that we look at the data for heat-related deaths, it's between two-thirds and three-quarters of them are men, mostly in the 40 to 65 demographic and up. But it's consistent every year, which is different from the rest of the country. You look at the rest of the country when they have heat-related deaths in places like Chicago, you don't see that gender bias the way we do here.
Is it because we're just basically numbskulls? Or I had read somewhere that as men age, their ability to recognize that they are dehydrated diminishes. Is that true?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things we talked about before the show in the green room, is that, you know, one thing that may actually be going on is that men and women are both getting dehydrated and getting heat-related illnesses, but women actually go to the emergency department and seek care in time.
Yes.
Where men sort of might be tending to say, well, I'll be okay, and it turns out they're not.
Now, you studied what happened in Brisbane in Australia regarding certain areas of cities in which heat deaths or heat-related illnesses seem to spike. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, sure. So the first part of the story is that heat-related deaths are just the tip of the iceberg here, the top of the pyramid for the total burden of heat on health. Here in Arizona, when we look at hospitalizations versus deaths, we see about 10 times more hospitalizations every year than we do for deaths. And the same is true in Brisbane as well. In Brisbane, we found that there is a relationship between temperature and hospitalizations. For every 10 degrees C, so that's about 18 degrees Fahrenheit, that the temperature goes up in the summer, hospital admissions increase by 7%. But that risk is not uniform across all of Greater Brisbane. There are certain pockets within the city, and they're sparsely spread across Brisbane, where the risk seems to be highest.
Low-income areas, I would imagine?
You know, it turned out not to be low-income areas, but areas where there weren't a lot of high-income earners. So this seemed to tell a story that air conditioning is a luxury in Brisbane that perhaps few can afford, and it's only in the places where air conditioning availability is high that we saw lower risk.
I want to get back to that in a second, but back now the idea of us numbskulls out there in the heat. What are the signs that it's getting to be a bit much, go get some water, get into some shade?
Well, so the first thing I say is, by the time you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated, right? So people think, well, once I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink water. Well, in the summertime in Phoenix, you're already on the downward slope to heat-related illness. So the key is to not be thirsty. Drink enough water so that you don't get thirsty, and then you can stay in that equilibrium where you're going to be okay. So it's really about cameling. If you know you're going to be outside for during the heat of the day, camel up before you go out there, and just make sure that you're real deliberate about drinking lots of water. If you do that, and if you're in generally good health, not on a lot of medications, you're probably going to be okay. But it's, we're trying to I don't want people to get afraid of the Arizona heat. We want people to stay physically active and go out and get exercise. You just need to be smart about it.
And in Brisbane, what as far as what you studied there, again, these different areas, it sounds like urban heat islands were a factor. You mentioned lack of air conditioning. How do they address that there?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were talking about this before we came on as well, on sort of the different types of interventions that might be appropriate for different populations, or in our Brisbane studies case, different places. The strategy you might use for someone in a certain occupation, or someone likely to be involved in outdoor activities like hiking, that would call for a different intervention strategy, sort of a short-term measure, encouragement to drink water, be smart about your behavior. Then perhaps someone who lives in a neighborhood who has lower incomes where they don't have access to air conditioning, or they're unwilling or reluctant to use it for economic reasons. And in that case, you might maybe consider some sort of subsidy program, maybe consider some sort of vegetation program that could help to reduce temperatures in those areas. I think we're continuing to learn that the more specific you can be for the most at-risk people, the better.
Does that make sense for Arizona as well?
That's a perfect public health intervention. That's exactly what we try to do in public health is, target your interventions for your high-risk populations, tailor those to the needs of that population, and then you have the best chance of being successful.
I know you said camel up and try to, if you know you're thirsty, you know you've kind of gone a little bit too far. What are the symptoms, though, after you're thirsty, some of the really serious stuff?
Right, dizziness might be one thing that you get, vomiting or nausea. If your skin starts to really get red, that's a sign of serious heat-related illness. And then the final thing is when you get to that sunstroke phase, you actually get pale and your skin gets dry. Any of those things, if they happen, are a serious medical condition. You need to get to the emergency department. But the real key is to be smart before you get to that stage and take breaks, drink plenty of water. Just be smart throughout the Arizona summer.
As far as what's happening in Australia, you mentioned subsidies for maybe seniors or folks on fixed incomes. Are they looking at these ideas? Are they incorporating some of these ideas?
Yeah, those discussions happen, but a lot of it depends on the political climate in certain places. The types of programs you might be able to institute with respect to extreme weather and climate. So the climate in Australia and Brisbane right now is not favorable for these sorts of programs, but perhaps it will change in the future.
Because I know, don't Brits in Britain and the UK, they do the same thing for cold weather,
yeah, exactly.
Correct?
Cold is a big health hazard in Britain, and there are subsidy programs to help residents in certain parts of the UK afford their heating bill.
So what can we do here in Arizona? I know donating water is always big when the temperatures get high.
Yeah, so one of the things we're doing as an agency at Department of Health Services, we have a water donation drive that we're doing right now. We ask all of our employees to bring in water, and then that allows us to participate in the community, get those resources out to the city of Phoenix and other the heat relief stations. And so that's one approach that you can help those vulnerable populations like the homeless to get access to water. In terms of the general population, it's just using that common sense to make sure that as you're going to be outside, if you're going to be active, if you have an outdoor occupation, to really stay in tune with your body and stay hydrated.
And I was going to ask that as my last question for you. How do you stay active? I mean, I like to golf. I like to work in the yard. I don't want to be sitting around watching TV all summer long because I'm an air conditioner. How do you stay active and not put yourself at risk? You just basically carry around a big water jug?
Well, that can work, right? I mean, if you get out early enough in the morning when it's still cool, that's one strategy. If you want to go out later when the sun's not beating down on you, that's another strategy. Staying hydrated throughout the day is another one. Another strategy is to go to the gym instead of working out outside. If you normally run in the winter, maybe you use the treadmill. Find alternative strategies. You know, there's a lot of things you can do inside the house for physical activity. So, you know, there's different approaches for different people. Yeah. Staying hydrated is always at that core. It's the base of the pyramid. You know?
And in water, what about Gatorade? Water, what?
Water is like 1/100th of a cent out of your tap.
Right.
So that's what I always recommend.
Right, but is Gatorade good for you?
Well, it depends. There's a lot of sugar in some of them.
Yeah, that's true. Before you go real quick, please, you were going to add something?
No, and taking breaks, I think we discussed before the show as well. It's really important too that cumulative exposure can be particularly dangerous. Any opportunity you have to take a break, whether it's getting into air conditioning or perhaps you're on the golf course, finding yourself under a tree for a few moments, all these simple measures can make a big difference.
Finding myself under a tree on a golf course always happens. That's the easiest thing
me too.
I can find is a tree. Good to have you both here. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nearly half of Arizona's households are just one financial disaster from falling into extreme poverty. For people of color, it's nearly 70%. The latest Arizona Town Hall focuses on those who live with no savings but still aren't poor enough to be covered by safety nets. Here to discuss the report are two Town Hall participants, attorney Scott Rhodes and Catherine Chang of APS. Good to have you both here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Before we get started, let's define the first term here. What is a town hall?
Well, this was our 104th town hall that we just held over more than 50 years. And twice a year we bring together leaders from around the state, a very diverse group of leaders from all walks of life, and from tribal leaders to local leaders to state leaders, business leaders, community leaders, members of city council. They're usually between 110 and 150 people, and we take on the toughest issues facing the state at that particular time.
And this one was taking on Arizona's vulnerable populations. One of the quotes from the report here, Arizona's most challenged residents are struggling now more than ever. Really, that valid statement?
I think it had a lot of. I think that statement has a lot of validity for Arizona. The voice, the collective voice of the town hall, with various leaders and professionals in a whole bunch of different fields, had statistics and facts and different points of view that were startling. I found that they were startling to me.
Give me an example. What seemed to move you the most, or maybe surprise you the most?
One of the things that really stood out, the background report before the town hall was prepared by ASU, and one of the statistics was 46% of Arizona households are vulnerable, and the way we defined that, it was being basically one crisis away from falling into where you need help from the safety net, from the social welfare system. So if you're walking down the street, pretty much 1 out of every 2 people you see is vulnerable in one way, statistically. And that can range from risk of losing a job or reduction of hours to things that are more serious. It can be people who are elderly might not have transportation to get to a doctor's appointment. So we looked at really a huge problem in terms of its breadth, but we over 2.5 days we focused very hard on what does it mean to be vulnerable, and more importantly, what might we be able to do as a state to help people who are vulnerable.
What were some of the thoughts on what the state can do to help these people?
The report was just released last night, and the common thread throughout all the recommendations had to do, were surrounding around communication, collaboration, and transparency. So I know that one of the town hall participants has actively taken on predatory lending and has reached out to Cynthia Zawick of the Arizona Community Action Association to begin putting together a plan on how to restrict predatory lending in their community, in his community.
I noticed liquid asset poverty was mentioned in the report, that 61% with subprime credit. Is it worse in Arizona? Is that kind of thing worse here than it is in other parts of the country?
As many things, it does tend to be a little bit worse in Arizona, and I think we get used to being ranked pretty low. And that is one of the areas, and it accounts for a fair amount of the vulnerability. I think one of the things that the participants learned in this town hall was the extent to which income, while important, is not as important to be resilient against vulnerability as having an asset basis.
And the report, 57% of Arizona workers have less than $25,000 total in savings.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a concern.
It's a distressing number, because when statistically it's shown that when people fall into and need the safety net, which can be either governmental programs or non-governmental programs, once they reach that point of crisis, the chances of success decline dramatically and the cost to society increases dramatically.
So again, with the recommendations, give us more in the way of specifics, or what you think, or what you just heard from being at the town hall. What were some of the stronger suggestions on how to maybe get rid of some of these system barriers, or at least get around them somehow?
Well, I think going back to the collaboration to remove some of the system barriers that currently exist. The Arizona Community Action Association is working really hard at evaluating some of the recommendations made by the town hall, and I believe Cynthia is going to address what can we do as an organization to take on some of these recommendations.
Do you have are there any ideas right now what folks can do as corporations, as entities, organized entities, to address this situation?
I think the report was just released last night, so for me it's hard to make that comment. But I do know that every business and organization should be mindful and again collaborate, coordinate, and make sure that everything that they're doing is transparent. So in order to help this population.
One of the things that really stood out to me about these participants at this town hall was the effort they put into coming up with recommendations. This town hall report has a lot of recommendations in it, and more importantly, they organize their recommendations by who will do them and how much will they cost. So, for example, there are of course some governmental actions that are recommended, but those are divided by those that are going to require extra funding and those that won't.
Right.
And then it goes from there to the business communities, to the local communities, and then very importantly individuals. Because this problem is so big that there's no one solution to it all. It'll take all of us to fix it.
And that's a good point. How do you convince organizations, people in the community, that an unseen vulnerability is such a big problem?
I don't know that it's an unseen vulnerability. I think it's it's how we acknowledge vulnerability. I think that's one of the threads that ran throughout the town hall. It's not so much that this person, because they are homeless, is vulnerable. It is my neighbor, my brother, my sister, my parents who are elderly. Those people are vulnerable, and so as a collective group, we really worked to make sure we dove in, I think, very well to address this.
But again, with the idea of unseen vulnerability, meaning not so much the homeless person, not so much the person, it's obvious there are problems there, but the person, again, maybe with $20,000 in savings, they're employed, the safety nets aren't quite eligible they're not eligible for those nets. They're vulnerable.
They are, and that was a very good point, because this town hall was very interested in recognizing that the vulnerability might not be obvious. It might not even be obvious to the people who are vulnerable. And we also have in our society some attributes that make it perhaps difficult to recognize or to express that you're vulnerable and reach out for help. So there was a lot of discussion about not only that problem, but also the other side of it, which is vulnerable people add a lot to our culture. They have a lot to offer us. They have stories to tell. they have oftentimes stories of resilience, stories of not letting themselves slip into crisis. And we might all learn from that. And that was also an important part of the town hall.
I agree.
All right, very good. It's good to have you both here. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
And tomorrow on Arizona Horizon, Arizona saw the nation's steepest per student cuts in state aid to higher education after the recession. We'll talk about that, and we'll check on an environmental report card for state lawmakers. That's tomorrow at 5:30 and 10 on the next Arizona Horizon. Want to remind you, if you want to watch tonight's program again, maybe check past episodes of Horizon or see what we have planned for the future, check us out at azpbs.org/horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.